Walking through the holiday train exhibit at the New York Botanical Gardens, we were surrounded by small, energetic children. Even before we got in the door, we saw them gleefully splashing in puddles along the walkway, parents fruitlessly cautioning them to look out for the people around them, lest unsuspecting strangers be soaked along with all those brightly colored puddle stompers. The appeal fell on deaf ears. Too engrossed were the children in exerting influence on their world, one soggy stomp at a time. Inside the exhibit, children leaned in over the rails, waiting for trains to emerge from a tunnel or come around the bend. Remarkably, none of them climbed over the rail to chase after a train or to grab one of those carefully crafted model houses, at least not that I saw. Parents and grandparents remained marginally in charge as together families explored that wonderland in miniature. Watching the happy chaos unfold among the Christmas lights made me laugh out loud over and over and filled me with joy. At least, I think that's what it was. The more time I spend contemplating this thing we call joy, the harder it is to pin down its precise meaning, its color and contours. What is it exactly that the ubiquitous Christmas hymn implores us to repeat? What is it that the prophet Isaiah foretold and third shift angels proclaimed to a bunch of unwitting shepherds who'd been minding their own business and tending their sheep? Sometimes I think it's easier to identify what joy is not. It's not smiling for the cameras just because that's what someone else wants you to do, or insisting that everyone cheer up and join the fun. It is definitely not an alcohol-induced high at the company holiday party, or going into debt to pile gifts under a tree. It's not Christmas songs piped into the mall, unless maybe you're walking through the mall holding hands with someone you love, or those cheesy songs make you dance despite yourself. Or they remind you of that time you went caroling out in the snow and your nose turned Rudolph red from the cold, but you made someone's day so it was all worth it. Joy is not shallow, but it can be sparked by a bit of foolishness. It cannot be imposed, but it can catch us by surprise, like a cup of cocoa thrust into our hands as we come in out of the cold. We cannot engineer joy, no matter how many ornaments we hang or presents we buy. But if you ask the Archbishop Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama, we can cultivate it, like so many seeds pressed into the cracks of a sidewalk until some of them finally bloom. Joy is a walking paradox. I worry this time of year that garlands and tinsel merely masquerade as joy, obscuring the deep pain that so many of us carry around this month or all year. I worry that repeat the sounding joy is an expectation forced on us by a culture that prefers the sugary glaze of a Christmas cookie to life's messier reality. Which is why I picked up the Book of Joy. Because the Archbishop Desmond Tutu and His Holiness the Dalai Lama have so much no such aversion to the messiness of life. On the contrary, they have looked pain squarely in the eye, attended to the wails of unimaginable grief, borne witness to the worst in humanity, suffered their own immeasurable heartache, and retained the capacity to love and to laugh. That is the joy around which I want to wrap my head and heart. Joy which is deep and abiding, because it has been forged in the kiln of human struggle. Joy which makes us more alive, until, in the words of Archbishop Tutu, we have hardship without becoming hard. We have heartbreak without being broken. Mary understood the paradox that is joy. Young Mary, newly pregnant, her head still spinning with the details of a memorable but no doubt terrifying angelic encounter. Mary somehow managed to hold these things together, that she was about to become a mother, with all the wonder and worry that always accompanies that sacred role. That the child she bore had a part to play in turning the world right side up. That no one undertakes such a task, unsettles the status quo, and upends power structures without suffering the consequences. How much of the truth had already registered in Mary's heart? We don't know. But if her joy-filled song of praise is any indication, she embraced it all. Accepted this singular partnership with God because she trusted God's transforming power and purpose. Embraced it because God had given her hope and a part to play in bringing God's vision of love and justice to birth. This week, Mary reminds me of other young women who are helping to turn the world right side up. Young women, you could name them too, like Greta Thunberg, Time Magazine's Person of the Year. Greta rose to prominence by speaking out in defense of a planet threatened by human-induced climate change. With fierce persistence and no small amount of wit, she has confronted the powerful on their thrones, gone toe-to-toe with the proud and the mighty, pronounced like the prophets of old that we must change our ways right now, and inspired others to join her on the way. Also in the news this week was Finland's newest and youngest ever Prime Minister, Sanna Marin, who will lead a coalition with 4 other parties, all headed by women, 4 of them under the age of 35. On Twitter this week, Prime Minister Marin wrote, "I want to build a society in which every child can become anything, and in which every human being can live and grow old with dignity." I don't know how any of these women might speak about their own joy, whether it fuels their efforts, how often it feels elusive. Public service can be grueling. Jesus knew that well enough. And yet, Greta Thunberg has clearly retained her sense of humor. And Prime Minister Marin speaks with a sense of hope for the future that inspires my own. Each one of them is giving a gift to a world that struggles. Watching these modern day Marys, witnessing their public acts on behalf of justice and healing for the planet, that gives me joy. And perhaps, friends, this is the key. Perhaps, after all, we can all learn something from brave young women and from those small children gleefully splashing in puddles. That joy, deep, authentic joy, comes not from hiding from the pain of the world, but from engaging with the world around us, exercising hope, exerting our influence on a world and being splashed in the process, whether that means leading a movement or reaching out to your next door neighbor, grabbing a protest sign, or baking homemade cookies for someone who is alone, whether it means marching on the border, protesting families who have been separated, or asking what your own community needs to be a little bit more just, a little bit more whole. Archbishop Tutu and Dalai Lama say that joy is a byproduct. It's produced by compassionate actions, generated in between us by the steps we all take to change the world toward greater justice and mercy, not just us, but for the earth and for all its creatures. Because, friends, that's God's joyful vision. Not only will people be healed from the devastating wounds of war and human conflict, the land itself will be transformed. The wilderness will no longer be a place of testing. It will be a source of delight. Even fools will walk along that holy way and not get lost. On that highway, there will be puddles enough for everyone to stomp in, and towels waiting to dry us off. There will be young women and wise elders laughing together and sharing their stories. There will be families reunited and flowers erupting in bloom within the cracks. There will be hope and love and healing to spare. And together, nature and heaven will sing. Friends, this is my prayer for us this day. This season, may we say yes to that. May we say yes to God's joyful vision, and so say yes to the world and to each other, even given its messiness. Along with all the Marys, may we say yes, knowing that it will hurt sometimes, knowing also that there will be delight and to spare for us, for the earth, and finally, for the one who delights in all of us. And so the Holy One will sing along with heaven and with earth. Let there be joy to the world. Amen.